Well, let's get down to business now. World Water Day is being observed across the globe today, with some progress largely made on availability, quality and supply to citizens in many countries. In Ghana, there's very little to cheer about. In fact, the country is in crisis. A heavy invasion of our rivers by illegal miners and bad environmental crises have led to serious depletion of the water quality and shot up the cost of treatment. We have details of such practices that pollute our water bodies coming up shortly. But today, a scarier revelation this afternoon has been that 3 out of every 5 Ghanaians drink water contaminated with feces, predisposing many Ghanaians to diseases such as cholera, dysentery and typhoid. Now, this worrying situation was revealed by the water NGO Water Sanitation and Hygiene WASH. Very worrying situation, but even more frightening is the manner in which the country's water bodies are being abused. Justice Beidou traveled to the western region where illegal mining, or galamsey as it's called, has resulted in pollution of the Pra River. He also found out how illegal mining is killing aquatic life and putting many fishermen out of work.
The Pra River, one of Ghana's largest water bodies, meandering through lush cocoa farms across 4 of the country's regions. On its banks, illegal miners, locally known as galamsey, are hard at work. All along the coast of the Pra, hundreds of machines like these in the background work day and night digging for gold from underneath the water. None of the boys I've met here would agree to speak with me on camera. But in private, they tell me the work they do here is a choice between life and death. They run into the hundreds. But the real people who pay the price for the havoc they cause are in the thousands, possibly millions. And the people bearing this brunt are not far away. Just a few kilometers downstream, I've come to see some of them in Anlo Beach, a small fishing town in the western region. To see what impact galamsey mines have on lives here, I've spent more than 5 hours watching 33-year-old Komla casting his fishing net. He's been fishing in the Pra River for more than 10 years. For him, he says, times have never been this tough.
We
used to get a lot of fish. Now, if we cast the net, we only get rubbish. Even today, I cast a net and got nothing. Life is getting tough.
After 5 hours of waiting to bring out the nets, this small fingerling is all we get. Instead, there's a lot of waste in the net.
During the washing of the gold into the river, the mercury, which is used in refining some of the gold, has destroyed the water, not only the mud, because the mercury getting into the water increases the high turbidity. So the chemicals kills the germs, or maybe let's say the fish species in the water. And the estuary or the river serves as the breeding habitat for most of the pregnant fishes. They come and they lay their eggs here. So if there is high increase in the chemical, it destroys some of these eggs that are being laid down.
The mud from the galamsey makes it difficult for the fishes to lay eggs. The fingerlings can't grow. Now people are also cutting the trees from the river, and that is making things worse.
More than 5,000 people live in Anlo Beach. 90% of them depend on the river for a living. They are not alone. There are hundreds of such vulnerable communities nationwide now reeling under the horrors of galamsey. Government's response has been more lip service and very little action. As Ghana head to the polls, many voters, including those at risk of environmental hazards like galamsey, will be waiting to see how those seeking to lead plan to address this menace. Justice Beidou, Joy News, and Long Beach in the Western region.
In the Western region, the Ghana Water Company says it will continue rationing water in the capital, Takoradi. It blames the situation on shortage of raw water and the extensive pollution of the Pra River, the main source of supply.
2 months now, I think the water supply has become a challenge to us here in secondary Takoradi, most especially Fiekuma. When you have it in the weekend, that is Saturday or Sunday, it will take you like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before you get another water supply. So it is not easy for us at all.
I stay at New Takoradi, and then the water problem there is very serious. Sometimes it goes for like 3 weeks, 1 month, no water. And then we have to trek to far places to fetch the water. If you don't have money to take a car, even if with a car, how many gallons are you supposed to take, or can you take along with you? It's very appalling.
Well, like I said, in Ghana, there's very little to cheer about Water Day and celebrating this day across the world. In fact, like I said again, the country is in crisis. So a heavy invasion of Ghana's rivers by illegal miners and bad environmental crises have led to serious depletion of the water quality and shot up the cost of treatment. Here is Director of WASH, David Duncan.
Currently, Ghana lacks adequate wastewater treatment systems, and the majority of households in Ghana and communities lack basic sanitation facilities. Globally, an estimated 1.8 million people use a source of drinking water which is contaminated by feces, putting them at risk of cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and polio. Unsafe water, poor sanitation and hygiene causes over 800,000 deaths every year. In Ghana, 3 out of 5 people, 3 out of every 5 Ghanaians, drink water which is contaminated with feces, risking diseases such as diarrhea and cholera. Simple diarrhea causes the deaths of over 3,600 children in Ghana every single year. And we have far too frequent outbreaks of cholera in our cities. We know the importance of treating our water before we drink it, but we need to focus more on treating it after we use it and before we dispose of it. Despite recent developments, positive developments, the majority of Ghana's household wastewater continues to be discharged untreated, much of it polluting our rivers, our groundwater and our coastal waters. But with these challenges, we also have opportunities. The costs associated with wastewater management are greatly outweighed by the benefits.
Well, that is David Duncan there, who will be joining me in the studio with a very quick discussion on this matter. What is the basis of that conclusion? That's what I'll tell you right after this break. Please stay. So that revelation is coming from the Water, Sanitation and Hygiene program. I've got the chief of that program in the studio with me, David Duncan. He likes to be called Kofi as well. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's talk about this revelation, or this the detail that you put out there earlier this morning. What is the basis for the conclusion that a number of Ghanaians are actually drinking water that is polluted with fecal matter?
That conclusion was actually reached by the Ghana Statistical Service a few years ago.
Okay.
There was a national survey undertaken, the Ghana Living Standards Survey. It's one of the main surveys that the Ghana Statistical Service does every few years. And as a result of that, they identified that about 2 out of every 5 people are drinking water from unsafe sources. But by the time they're actually drinking it, 3 out of 5 are drinking water that's not safe. So there's actually pollution in the water sources, and then it's getting worse because in between collecting water from the water source, it's getting contaminated further. So in the end, 3 out of every 5 people drinking water which is contaminated.
Okay, and I know that the WASH program actually is supposed to deal with some of these problems that we got with sanitation, etc. What is the role that the program is playing in, you know, working this out so that many more people do not continue drinking polluted water?
The WASH program is supporting the government of Ghana in trying to make sure that across the whole country, the water supplies are actually managed in a safe way. A lot of this is not about specific treatment to remove the sources, the problems with the pollution. It's about stopping it getting into the water sources in the first place.
Okay.
So it's about people looking at the catchment, and that might just be the little area around the well, and making sure they're not building toilets right next to it.
Okay.
And doing the simple, sensible things to reduce the risk to the water supplies.
Okay.
And then once we've done that, and we're getting water from a well or somewhere else we know is safe, the containers we pick it in, the containers we carry it in, and where we store it doesn't lead to it getting contaminated in our own household or on the way.
Okay. So your focus, is it just about building the activities around water bodies, like by the community? Does it look also at illegal mining, for instance, because that is a major problem affecting the Ghana's water bodies?
The process that we're supporting government to do helps them to identify what the risks are.
Okay.
And then they work through how they're going to manage it. So
I believe that by now they've identified that illegal mining is a part of it. What is the conversation going on between WASH and the government of Ghana about illegal mining and what they intend to do?
From our perspective, it's really just helping government identify what the problem is. From there, they have their own processes in how they manage it. The EPA can be involved, Water Resources Council can be involved. From our program, as I said, we support them to identify the problems.
Okay.
I support them to identify how major a problem this is, but we don't get involved in identifying how to solve the Galamsey problem per se.
But you've already identified the Galamsey as a problem to them, if that is how the program is. If you're just supporting them to identify the problems, you must have identified illegal mining as a problem.
We're helping them identify what their problems are. So we won't actually go out and say this is a problem or this is a problem. We will support government with the tools to say, okay, when we look at it, we see these are the risks in our catchment.
Right.
And this is how significant a risk is. And I should mention that also that this has only really been, the process has only been going about 1 year. So we're still in the process of actually identifying what those risks are and how significant they are.
So I'm interested to find out from you, from your perspective. I mean, of course, you're supporting this as a development partner, but what's the future you see? Because I believe that you've got researchers who have done a lot of work about this. What is the future? What predictions is the WASH program able to make about sustainability of our water resources here in Ghana?
Okay, in terms of sustainability, there's certainly a range of pressures. As we see the country develop and income grows, people tend to use more water. So there's going to be an increasing demand for water. Okay. As people move to cities, we get an increasing demand for water. And as the country becomes industrialised or agriculture grows, we'll also see a greater demand. When you combine that with pressures of climate change, then we really run into challenges longer term. So it's absolutely critical that government helps the communities and the basins manage those water resources to balance those conflicting pressures. Longer term, that's the water supply, the water resources side. The water supply side, we still have major challenges reaching the remote and the communities which are in the areas where there's not ready water sources. So there needs to be a lot of effort in getting to those last group of people. There's still nearly 5 million Ghanaians that don't have access to a safe water supply.
Okay. So which country do you originate from?
I originate from Australia.
Australia. So
yes.
Is the WASH program putting forward examples from the Australian example, how Australia has dealt with its water bodies to government that you're working with?
Not specifically. We're actually looking the UNICEF WASH program is looking all around the world for what solutions work in what contexts.
Okay.
Some of the solutions in developed countries will work here.
Yeah.
Some of the others where there might not be quite the same level of funding, we're looking for examples in other African countries, or even some of the very close partners sometimes have ideas that will work very, very well within the Ghana context.
Okay.
So we're not limited anywhere, we're looking everywhere.
You're looking everywhere.
We're looking
and I believe that the WASH program is going good so far?
We think so. Hopefully our partners do as well.
Okay, thank you very much for passing through. I've been speaking with David Duncan. If you like, you can put Kofi in the middle there somewhere and call him David Kofi Duncan. I believe you're a Friday born, that's why you like Kofi. Okay, so he is Chief of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene, the WASH program, and they are basically into sanitation, etc. And today we're marking International Water Day. Thank you once again for coming. Well, let's move to Parliament now, where the issue of water has been on the floor. Members of Parliament are demanding government provides more access to this precious commodity to Ghanaians, as Water and Sanitation and Water Resources Minister Kofi Adda appeared before the House. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent. He joins me on the telephone lines now. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Gifty.
Is there any real plan to deal with all the problems that have been identified with water in Ghana in Parliament today? Did they do that?
Yes, the Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation, Joseph Adda, was on the floor to deliver a statement on what exactly is being done to help ensure the provision of water. He made specific reference to the theme for the celebration of the World Water Day today, which has something to do with recycling of wastewater, and he indicated that at the level of government, they are taking that very seriously to ensure that there is more efficient use of water, and water which is used for agricultural activities and other activities are recycled in a way to help ensure all people get access to water. But there were complaints from a number of the members of Parliament about water delivery in their specific neighborhoods. For example, the member of Parliament for the Bongo area, Ibet Bauer, indicated that water being provided to his constituents through the Ghana Water Company contains very high levels of the chemical fluoride. He says that there's been some research that's been done which shows that the fluoride level in the water that is provided to them is something in the region of 3.5 grams when it comes to every 1 liter that is fed. But the moderate rate should be 1.5. And he says that this situation is affecting the teeth of young people, that it's affecting their health, and it's resulting in a situation where their education is being affected. The Member of Parliament for Adenta, Yabuabia Samoa, also contributed to the statement and indicated that there's been a lot of talk about the Adenta water situation being resolved by the previous government, but that's not exactly the situation on the ground. One other concern that came up also has to do with illegal mining activities and the effect that this is having on the ability of the Ghana Water Company to process water and distribute to homes. The MP for Nalerugu Gambaga, Hadja Alima Mahama, who is also the Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, raised concerns about that, and she called for a concerted effort on the part of government and other stakeholders to stop the illegal mining activities in water bodies so that then fresh water can be made available for people.
So it doesn't really sound like there were any specifics about dealing with Galamsey, which has been identified as a major problem, a major something that has a major effect on our ability to produce water. Was there?
The Member of Parliament made a number of suggestions as to how this can be dealt with going forward, calling for strict enforcement of the laws of the country. They've also been indicating that this is a situation that's happening because of the connivance between chiefs in local areas and also those who are involved in some of these activities. And so one of the members of Parliament, for example, asked her colleague members of Parliament to ensure that when they go back to their constituencies, they hold the necessary engagement with the traditional authorities and encourage them not to give off land to allow for some of these illegal mining activities. Those are some of the suggestions that were given as to how this problem should be tackled going forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, there in Parliament, giving us that update of what happened today in Parliament. So what is the situation on the continent in terms of how water bodies are being protected? That is something that we'll tell you right after this break.
Water. It's life's most basic need. But there's a water crisis in our world right now. Seriously, a crisis. Nearly 1 billion people live without clean drinking water. It's happening all over the world, especially in developing areas of sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. It's a water crisis because it starts with water. But water affects everything. Education, health, poverty, and especially women and children. Let's look at a family caught in the water crisis. It's likely they live on less than $1 a day. When they're thirsty, they can't just turn on the faucet for a nice cold glass of water. They don't have a faucet. Instead, the women and children go off to collect water. Many walk up to 3 hours a day to the nearest swamp, pond, or river to gather water that's been sitting out in the open, exposed to all kinds of germs. Time spent gathering water is time they can't spend learning to read, write, earn an income, or take care of their family. Some women in sub-Saharan Africa spend more time collecting water than any other activity they do in the day. And the walk isn't just hard, it's dangerous. The women are alone and burdened with 40 pounds of water. Many get hurt. Sometimes they're even attacked. When they make it home, the little water they've collected isn't clean. Some families know their water is contaminated with germs that cause diarrhea, dehydration, even death. But what choice do they have? Kids, especially babies, are affected most by these germs. About every 19 seconds, a mother loses one of her children to a water-related illness. And each day, almost 1 billion people are living this way. Until they get a little help. The water crisis is solvable. There are solutions. Some are brand new and innovative, like water filtration systems. Some are age-old, like drilled or hand-dug wells. These solutions bring clean water much closer to the people who need it. A safe water project near a village restores hours each day to a person's life. This time, it's opportunity. It's freedom to go to school and get an education, to work or start a business, to raise a family. Africa alone could save 40 billion hours each year. That's the entire annual workforce of France. Clean water means less disease. That's less money spent on medicine, which means more money for books and school uniforms. And if the water project is built near a school, it can increase attendance, especially among young girls. The water crisis is vast, but we can solve it. Just $20 can provide one person with access to a clean water project in their village. And this will mean more than clean water. Because water changes.
That's a piece of information there. I believe it's useful. We can now watch Donald Tay, who is Chief Director at the Water Resources Ministry, providing some information on what government intends to do or some of the government interventions that will support or protect Ghana's water bodies.
The government, through its manifesto, seeks to give real meaning to these policy directions through the following practical actions. Employ science and technology to identify the most economic and efficient ways to recycle urban waste. Support the establishment of recycling and reprocessing companies to manage waste. This will extend the industrial value chain as well as create a new raw material base for existing and new industries. Ensure that the water and sanitation sector gets the investment that it needs to upgrade antiquated water and sanitation system, as well as undertake new systems that will address the many facets of safe water and sanitation delivery services, and manage waste in such a way as to reduce pollution of our water bodies. Mr. Chairman, in addition to these strategic actions, it is equally important to increase awareness and commitment of action at all levels through flagship initiatives and compelling and frank dialogues. Such commitments shall be real and utilized to review, develop, and implement effective actions to scale up solutions for water security. This should be through sustained water utilization and wastewater management programs with clear responsibilities for getting actions done at the national and local levels.
Donante is Chief Director at the Water Resources Ministry there. You're still watching The Pulse with me, Gisti Andopia.